Item number 6, resolution adopting San Joaquin Hills Board of Directors regular meeting schedule for fiscal year 2014-15. Mr. Kramen.
Morning. Last month we approved a resolution that sets the San Joaquin Hills Board meetings for the third Thursday of each month with a start time of 9 a.m. But there are instances when additional meeting days and/or adjusted start times are needed. For example, in June when we do our budget meetings, we would want to adjust our start time earlier and adjust the other board's start time later. There's also at times the need for an additional board meeting, and in particular we have a need for an additional board meeting in the month of September. That's an item that's open for discussion amongst the board members. We have two options, either September 22nd at 9 a.m. or September 25th at 12 noon. So we need to make a determination on which time is at the pleasure of the board for that meeting. And then we also are instituting that we have an actual scheduled date and time for the full year's worth of regular board meetings, and that will be, once approved, this resolution will, going forward, set our meetings that way as opposed to at a date each month, time each month, and then we'll get that posted on the website. So that's the item that's before you today.
Director Shea.
Yes, could you tell us what the days are of those two dates?
Yeah, Monday, September 22nd at 9 a.m. or Thursday, September 25th at noon.
Okay.
Excuse me, didn't we decide, at least at the last meeting, that was it Todd that couldn't make the 22nd, and so that's where the 25th date came up with?
There is a better opportunity for attendance on the 25th.
On the 25th, okay. I just wanted everybody to know that.
So, Mr. Kramen, it strikes me that there's two actions on this. One, to adopt the general meeting schedule, the regular meeting schedule, and two, to select the day next week for the special meeting. That
It would not be a special meeting.
Not a special.
I would take those items in reverse.
Okay.
So I would set the date for a regular board meeting of the two choices, and then after that, adopt the full slate of meeting dates, including...
Okay. Any further questions of staff? Anybody care to make a motion as to the 22nd or the 25th?
I would make a motion that the meeting be set on the 25th.
On the 25th, you said?
Yeah.
And that would be at noon, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Okay, a motion by Director Hill that the next regular meeting be held on the 25th at noon, seconded by Director Everett. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Looks like our next regular meeting, excuse me, is on the 25th. Now, as to the scheduled regular meetings for the following year, any further discussion on that item? Is there a motion?
Move staff recommendation, adopt the
Okay.
resolution.
Motion to move the staff recommendation by Director Caruth,
Second.
second by Director Reardon. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, I'm going to take one item slightly out of order. Before item number 7, I'm going to ask Director Chun to report out on the San Joaquin Hills Financial Ad Hoc Committee before we hear item number 7. Director Chun, are you prepared to do that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The San Joaquin Hills Financial Ad Hoc Committee met on August 21st and also on September 8th to review the progress made on the refinance transaction. Obviously, this transaction has a lot of moving parts, as we learned with the Foothill Eastern refinance last year. But everything is moving forward, and moving forward well, thanks to a lot of effort by our staff and contributions by the board. The recent discussion meetings with the ratings agency have been productive, and we've made a few refinements to the refinance structure in line with the preliminary ratings process. The traffic and revenue report is almost final, and the board is going to receive an overview today from Steve Avenshine from Stantec. We also discussed the other agenda item that staff is presenting today regarding the consent process. And this is another step in the refinance process. Time-wise, we should be ready to go to market sometime in the next 30 days or so. It is if the board chooses to authorize the refinance, which could be before us at our next meeting or the first meeting in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chun. Any questions? Comments? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7. Ms. Potter?
Thank you. Well, Director Chun just explained that we are in the process of preparing our traffic and revenue study. And today we have Steve Abenshine with Stantec here to provide an overview. So I'd just like to introduce Steve.
Thank you, and good morning.
Morning.
Just want to take you briefly through, the components of the traffic and revenue study and what we've seen going forward as far as the 30-year forecast for traffic and revenue potential on the San Joaquin. Just a little background. Obviously, you all know where the road is and where it lies in the Orange County study area. But just to give you a little background on the scope of the traffic and revenue study. Back in 2012, we did a significant data collection effort where we collected traffic speeds, traffic volumes, classifications, origin destination patterns at over 100 locations throughout Orange County. And we used this to basically recalibrate the travel demand model, the regional model for the 5-county study area, to make sure that it accurately reflected traffic that existed in that at that time. We also then proceed with a third-party independent review of the local forecast for households and employment, which are main drivers of traffic usage into the future. And we use that combined with a number of toll alternatives to look at potential traffic and revenue going into the future. Next slide. But first I want to talk a little bit about the historical performance of the facility. Excuse me. What you can see here is basically transactions and revenue on the San Joaquin since it opened in 1997. The purple line represents transactions, which you can see have been relatively steady over the life of the facility. But what's interesting is you kind of had 3 different periods of revenue performance on this road. From 1997 all the way to about 2007, as we were in the expansion part of the economic cycle, you can see that revenue growth on the facility was very strong and consistent. Revenues grew about 1% month by month for that 10-year period. We then hit obviously the Great Recession, which is highlighted here in yellow. We had a lot of job loss, a lot of home foreclosures, and that really slowed down and decreased travel throughout the regional network, which also impacts toll roads a little more substantially. And you can see that there were transaction losses during that time period, but because the board took actions and raised toll rates even in those tough economic times, the revenue of the road was actually relatively flat. It was only down a very, very small amount from that 2007 to 2011 period. That's very important when you compare it in the context of how other toll facilities throughout the country performed. A lot had both significant transaction and revenue losses. But what's been very encouraging is that over the last 2 to 3 years, you've seen both transaction growth and revenue growth return to this facility. And you're a little bit below the trend of that first 10 years of operation, but not by much. So we've seen some very encouraging trends, particularly in the last 18 months or so on the transaction side, and on the revenue side for the past 2 to 3 years. Looking year by year, you can see this chart shows the average weekday transactions, the average toll rate charged, and the annual revenue generated by the facility. And a couple points that I wanted to make on this slide, focusing more on recent trends. In fiscal year 2014, as you're all aware, in the light of even a very substantial toll increase of over 10%, transactions grew over 5% on the average weekday. That's very substantial, and it resulted in a revenue growth of about 16.5%. The next thing that's interesting is we only have 2 months of data through fiscal year 2015, but as you'll hear later today, transactions are actually up in comparison to 2014. We had forecasted a decrease in transactions due to basically two different reasons. One being the conversion to all electronic tolling. We did assume that there'd be a slight transaction loss as some of the cash customers no longer used the facility, did not convert to express account or the one-time toll, and left the facility altogether. But we also, again, had another substantial toll increase in July, where in addition to raising rates, the peak periods were actually expanded by an hour in both the morning and the afternoon, and there was the introduction of a new peak rate within the peak period. So we did think that there would be transaction loss in this upcoming fiscal year, but I'm happy to report through 2 months, we've actually seen transaction growth, so that's a very strong sign. Another thing I'd like to point out is you can see this road's had a history of some very high toll increases. During the recession, there were some substantial toll increases, and over the past few years, we've seen the same. The forecast that we have projected going forward assumes that toll increases would only mirror inflation. So we've actually assumed that basically from now to 2050, the average toll increase would only be about 2.5%. So we do forecast a much lower toll rate increase for the next 35 years of the forecast. Next slide. So just a comparison as to how the toll rates on the facility compare to other toll roads throughout California. You can see right about in the middle of the chart is the San Joaquin at about 43 cents per mile on the peak toll rate. This is lower. A lot of the express lane projects throughout the state, you can get as high. The 91 express lanes, their top toll rate right now is $9.65, or about 96 cents a mile. So you can see that I think there's a conception that the road has very, very high toll rates, but when you really compare it to other toll roads throughout the state of California, you can see it's actually right in line with the middle of that scale. One of the things that we did as part of our data collection is we actually drive all of the competing facilities throughout the peak periods. And we do this with little GPS readers in our cars to help us figure out, how fast we're going at any given time, where the congestion exists on the competing facilities, and what the average speeds are during those travel time runs. And what we're showing here is the data that we recorded during the AM and PM peak hours on the freeway network that serves as the main competitors to the 73. And I'm sure I don't have to tell anybody in this room, but the I-5-405 is an extremely congested competitor for a toll-free alternative to the SR-73. Basically, if you start in South County in the morning, you drive anywhere from 20 to 35 miles per hour on average up the 5 northbound, and then the same level of congestion exists on the 405 northbound as well. So a trip from South County into downtown Irvine, the 73 can save you about 25 minutes as an alternative to the 5405. Similar problems exist in the PM peak period. You can see again, the data shows the 405 corridor is heavily congested in both directions during the afternoon, and the I-5 southbound returning to a lot of the housing in South County, again, very heavy congestions. So this road does offer a nice level of time savings and a great alternative to the heavily congested toll-free network. So looking into the future, 2 major factors drive traffic growth, and that is employment and household growth. Focusing first on employment, in the 5-county study area, so that includes Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego, Riverside, and San Bernardino, we project about 2.4 million jobs in growth over the next 20 years, or about 1% per year, about 95,000 jobs per year. Orange County is right in line as right on that average level. LA County and San Diego County, we expect to grow a little slower. Riverside County and San Bernardino a little faster, mostly because they're at a lower base of employment today. But we do see, Orange County is a very popular employment center today. We think that'll continue. If you look at the bottom left chart, that shows the historic growth rate of employment in the area, and we expect to return to that average trend line over time. And the bottom right just shows basically over the next 5 years, the level of job growth that we project in Orange County. So talking a little bit about the 73's place in Orange County and the trips that it serves. So what this actually is it's a map of Orange County with the level of employment density in what's called a transportation analysis zone. So our traffic model is divided up into a number of zones that could be related to different pockets of employment and households. And what's interesting here is when you look at the 73, there's a heavy density of employment at both its northern and southern ends. The northern end, you have a lot of the development up in the John Wayne Airport area. In the southern end, you have development, or I guess at the midpoint, you have development in the El Toro Y region. And this corridor really serves as a nice link, to those employment centers. And what the chart on the right shows is that density in 2020. So we expect, employment growth to continue and densification to continue to occur in these areas at the northern and southern ends of the corridor. So over time, we believe that, the road's attractiveness to potential users will only continue to increase. Similarly, on the household side, about 1.5 million new homes between now and 2035, so a slightly slower growth rate. What we've actually seen in Orange County, due to the high level of home costs, there's a higher percentage of multi-worker households in Orange County. So you'll see that the employment growth exceeds household growth as more and more households in Orange County become multi-worker homes. The average number of jobs per household in Orange County we project to increase today from about 1.36 to about 1.52. So basically every household in Orange County will have 1.5 workers associated with it. The chart in the bottom left, sorry if you could just go back. The chart in the bottom left, you'll see a lot less volatility in household growth in Orange County. So we do think that the trend that we've seen in the past will continue. And again, we think that growth will be relatively consistent over the next 5 to 6 years as in the short-term growth. Similar maps that we saw before, this just focuses on household density. South County's become a very attractive housing area in Orange County. The areas have really developed over the last 15 to 20 years. We see that density continuing to happen. So a lot of that South County, Dana Point area, we believe that household density will continue to increase. And again, the communities at the northern end of the 73 as well, where you have density, there is still increased development that's planned for those areas. And we expect that this road will continue again to serve these heavy household areas in both South Orange County and up at the 73-405 junction. One thing that we like to look at is what we call screen line growth. So basically, when we did all these traffic counts in 2012, we draw a line across a number of different roads that are major carriers in the network. So you can see this screen line crosses the Pacific Coast Highway through the mainline toll plaza on the 73, crosses through the 405, the 5, all the way up to the Tomato Springs toll plaza. So it's basically if you drew a line across Orange County, what are the number of vehicles that cross this line? And what this shows is, the first thing is, the 73 carries a very small number of vehicles when you compare it to the 5 and the 405. You've got a little over 50,000 vehicles a day crossing through the Catalina View mainline plaza, whereas the 405 and the 5, you're really looking at almost 200,000 vehicles per day at those two locations. Sorry, yes?
Yeah, as the load increases on the 405 and the 5, will you find that more people are taking the entire road? In other words, people out of San Diego and south actually are coming up to 73 more?
What's interesting is when you look at, let's say, a through trip on the 73 from San Diego to LA County, it's a relatively small percentage of the total trips. I think today it's about 12 to 15%. We see some growth there, but it's not. It grows up to in about the 15 to 20% range. It's not. The road still really serves.
Yeah, but concomitantly with your comments to the effect of crowding on the 405 and the 5, won't that force some of the people who want to move around fast and basically over to the 7 acres?
Yes, it definitely does. What is working against you there is, as you'll see when we get to the forecast, there are widening projects planned on both the 5 and the 405 that should be opened in about 2023. So when those projects are completed, it does take away some of that benefit. But yes, we do see growth in that trip pattern going into the future.
The opposite is true during the course of the construction.
Correct.
It forces people off that road.
That's correct, but we don't forecast a benefit to the 73 during construction. So it's sort of a revenue upside of the road that will most likely occur during that construction.
Mr. Chair, I just as far as logistics here, do you want questions during this presentation or at the end? I've got a ton of little questions that have been going along. I was trying to reserve them, but I'm happy to ask them if that's...
I think if you have a question, I know the speaker is very adept at this presentation. I've heard it about 4 times already.
Oh, really?
And it's a great presentation, and there's a lot of good in it. So I would say just jump right in. Just jump right in 2 at a time.
Okay, I just have a couple of little questions. Can we go back a few slides? Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
And then, don't forget where you are, because we
Yeah.
want to continue. But on the transportation increase chart, at the very beginning, you had the little squiggly ones with the big lines that went
Mhm.
over. It's probably the third chart. You mentioned that you were excited about the transaction growth, but I didn't see any transaction growth in the bottom line. Why didn't I see any? And you said there was some.
So it's really,
That's the one.
yeah, if you look at, actually, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that basically, if you look at transactions in 2011, 12, and 13, they were relatively flat. So you had 1% growth, 0.2% loss, 0.7% loss.
Right.
What I was really referring to is what's happened over the last year. And you've seen, a 5% rise in transactions, even with a 10% toll
Right,
increase.
82 versus the 78?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And even the 2015 number that's shown here was our forecast, but what you've seen through 2 months of 2015 is additional transaction increase as well.
Okay, so the prior chart doesn't include,
It's hard to, it goes up through June 30th of this year, so it does have that fiscal year 2014, but the month-by-month variation makes it a little more difficult and the scale to
Right.
see that slight uptick in the last year.
okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
I wasn't, wanted to make sure I was looking at the right chart. The next one was the rate comparison chart, when you had the miles per and the 43 cents and you want to grab that one?
Mhm.
My question on that one was, I think that you might be comparing the entire length of the road
That's
with
correct.
the toll at the top of the plaza.
Mhm.
What is the short trip? Because, really the short trip is you get on one side, you pay the toll at the top of the plaza, you get off the next one. That's going to be a much higher number, right?
Yeah, correct. This is a full-length trip for all of these comparisons. If you were to look at the absolute highest toll on the shortest pattern, these numbers would change, but there's so many different combinations of origin destinations and those rates, not only on this road, but if you look at like the Foothill Eastern, what we did was looked at the full-length trip from common trip end to common trip end for comparison's sake.
Mr. Chairman, might I request that report? Might I request a report that would show the toll per mile based upon the various entrance and exit points?
I think you just did.
Thank you.
And that actually it was exactly where I was going next. And then is it possible to get this presentation? It wasn't in our packets like this. I would love to have it distributed so we could spend a little more time than just presenting it.
I think that's okay.
Okay, that would be really helpful, because we're digesting a lot of information you're presenting, but a lot of these slides go by and I don't even really see all the numbers.
Yeah, just real quick, a clarification on the all of the different rate per miles. So that would be peak, off-peak, cash, express account, fast track, every payment type, every time of day. Is that what we're looking for? Director Hill?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other one was on the household growth
Mhm.
slide. Could you get that one back up again? There was numbers across the left side, and again, I think this might have just been the speed of the slides going by. I saw a 7 million number on the side. There were a bunch of those numbers on the left side, 5 million to 8.5 million. What is that, total households?
Yes, that's total households in the 5-county study area.
Okay.
So that's not just
like,
ours.
there's only 3.2 million people in
Correct.
the county. How are you getting
Right.
8 million households?
Well, the vacation homes. Yeah. No, that includes Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange, Riverside, and
Okay.
San Bernardino.
That makes more sense. Thank you. Again, just
And your house.
and my, yeah, of course. Thank you. Carry on. Back where you were.
Yep.
Any other questions at this time?
Yeah.
Please continue.
Okay, so looking at screen line growth, so what we see is basically we're projecting that the overall level of traffic growth between now and 2020 to be about 12% across the screen line, and about an additional 20% between 2020 and 2035. So what that results in is that the Catalina toll plaza, we expect to grow from its 55,000 transactions today to almost 70,000 in 2030. You can see that the 405 and the 5, continue to grow. The 5 from about 200,000 today up to about 275,000 vehicles per day in 2035. Again, because of the widening of the I-5 that's planned, it can accommodate a lot of that growth. But we do expect that the toll-free alternatives will remain very congested, and that will help the attractiveness of the 73. And then finally,
Commissioner, on that last slide, does that assume a connection, a 73 direct connector from 405 to 73?
it does not. I-405 improvement project that's included in the network is the OCTA alternative 1. So it only has the one general purpose lane in each direction.
So not reflected of the 4-5 PDT's recommendation for alternative 3.
When our study was underway, that I do not believe that alternative had been the official recommendation. The other question is the alternative 3. It was unclear at the time whether, if it was selected, it would have a direct connection to the 73. I know that there was an alternative 3 that was truncated with a southern terminus north of the 73.
Is it safe to assume that those numbers would go up with a direct connector to 73?
It does have a slightly positive impact, basically because it allows more traffic into the 405 corridor in general, which would then allow more traffic to get onto the 73, yes.
Director Hill? No? Okay.
So now looking at our base case forecast, we do expect toll revenues to grow annually for life of the forecast at about 3.2%. We have transaction growth of about 1% from now until 2022. You see that drop in 2023. That is the completion of the widening projects on the 5 and the 405. So essentially, those widening projects do decrease the attractiveness and the time savings offered by the 73. So we do anticipate transaction loss when those projects are completed. But as I stated earlier, we do not forecast the transaction upside of the construction process itself. So, I think it'll be probably a 3 or 5 year construction period while those projects, highway widenings are occurring, where, you may see an uptick in transactions on the 73. We do have modest transaction growth for the life of the forecast, about 0.6%. So we think that this is a conservative forecast. We believe that, the road, given its time savings advantage to the congested freeway network, can attract higher levels of usage than this, but we wanted to be, conservative as part of the restructuring of the debt service for the project. On those grounds, one of the things that we assume in our model, so we have a value of time in the model that basically reflects how much drivers are willing to pay for a certain level of time savings. And to be conservative, we always hold that value of time to be constant over the life of the forecast. So basically, if your value of time is $20 an hour today, in 2035, your value of time is still $20 an hour. What we found is when you look at Orange County, basically value of time gets tied very closely to median household income. And what we found is that income has grown much faster than inflation over the last 25 years in Orange County. You can see the chart there in the bottom left that shows different periods of time and how much faster income has grown versus inflation. And there are periods over the last 25 years where income has grown a full percentage point faster than inflation. So what this means is that there's certainly a very strong possibility that the value of time that we've used in our model is understated. So in order to determine the level of upside that this may result in, we actually ran a scenario where we grew the value of time only 0.5% more than inflation. So that means, if your value of time is $20 today, it may be $22.50 in the future. Yes.
Director Hack?
Yeah. Also, is it not true, basically, that as the cost of transportation per se goes up, for instance, when gas costs $3.50 a gallon, it's one thing, when gas costs $4.50 another. So as people begin to pay more for the entire transportation era, they basically look with less concern on the rises that we have on the road.
Yeah, though I think it's interesting when you look at rising transportation costs, because while everybody thinks about gas and the fact that the price of gas has really been volatile over the last 5 to 7 years, vehicle efficiency has really gone up substantially, so that now, and we have government standards that vehicles have to have a certain level of miles per gallon, into the future. So basically people are filling up a lot less than they used to be. Cars are, much more reliable and have a lot less, wear and tear and upkeep on them these days. So I think that, it's hard to say exactly where the future of transportation costs are. I don't know that, it's fair to say that they're increasing at any sort of, high percentage. But I think that, there's certainly, we wanted to, even at a 0.5%, we think that that's a conservative upside that we're showing a lot of data that income's growing 1-2% faster. We wanted to just look at 0.5% faster. And what we found is that resulted in 9% more transactions in 2035. So there is a lot of upside if the road, if income levels in Orange County continue to exceed the growth of inflation. The other thing that's true about this road is it sits in an area that has higher levels of income than the county as a whole. When we look at our analyses, we basically assume a value of time for the county as a whole, not necessarily trying to isolate, all of the users of an individual road. So there's a possibility also that we're understating the levels of income of the actual users of the facility. So we think that these are obviously upsides on both transaction growth and revenue growth for the road, but we really wanted to put forth a conservative forecast to structure the debt as part of this transaction.
Director Ming?
Yes, thank you. That's very good. And so what you're basically saying is more people making more money are going to be more inclined to ride the road, and that makes perfect sense. How does this revenue growth pattern compare to nearby other communities? I was going to ask you already answered the one about internally inside Orange County, but how does this compare with LA County or Riverside County or places like that?
Well, what's interesting, we didn't look explicitly at income versus inflation for all 5 of the counties. We could certainly do that, but about 80% of your users originate in Orange County on the San Joaquin. So we thought that this was obviously a representative sample of this road in particular. I know that a lot of the household income growth may not be readily available for all 5 counties, but we can certainly look at that and produce an identical comparison.
Yeah, the reason for the question was because if everyone's income is going up, then something's wrong with the math. If there has to be pockets where you aren't seeing that increase, or we're going to have a traffic impact to what you're talking about, because the people, there are always going to be service people who aren't seeing the income growth that the professionals are seeing, and so that will increase the demand of traffic, people coming into the community if we don't have those facilities. This kind of ties back to the whole low-income housing discussion.
Right.
But, so that's why it was a test of if you see us having an increase in like this, but you don't see neighboring communities, then that actually makes sense.
Yeah, I think that one of the unique things about Orange County is the industries that make up a lot of the employment centers here are the high-level industries, and a lot of the employment growth that we see, particularly in the Inland Empire, is more of the service level, right. Local retail servicing, household growth, as opposed to some of the industry that is in Orange County. So I would suspect, and we're happy to take a quick look at it, that you would see the patterns that you're suggesting, that level of income growth wouldn't exist around all 5 counties.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. No more questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. No action necessary on that item. Very informative report. Item 8, seeking consents to possible amendments to the agency's master indenture in preparation for potential refunding and repurchase through a tender of some or all of the agency's outstanding bonds. Ms. Potter.
Yes. This is another step in the process of pulling together a refinance transaction. This resolution authorizes staff to seek consents from the bond insurer and a majority of the 97 bondholders to amend the 97 bond indenture and also to amend certain terms of those bonds. This will enable us to pull together a transaction that is more complete for your approval when you approve, or when the refinance transaction is before you for your approval. So that concludes my report. This is the recommendation here is to approve the staff recommendation, the resolution that authorizes us to seek those.
I would second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Hack and a second by Director Hill. Discussion. And we'll start with Director Shea.
Yes,
and move on down the dais there.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Do you sense we'd have any pushback?
It's just a process. I think, it will enable us to ensure that what we bring forth to you has been agreed to.
Okay. Thanks.
Director Caruth. Okay, Director May.
Thanks very much. I did have one question. The one thing that I'm concerned with, this is an important piece of the process, so I completely understand that we need to do this. The one thing that I'm concerned with is the timing. I would very much like, the indentures are where those things that we really dislike about the current deal are. And the way this is drafted, it says that it'll come back to us for its approval prior to or concurrently with consideration of the deal. And I really don't want the first time this board as a whole body sees those indenture provisions to be the time when we have to vote on the whole deal, because then it's going to be a foregone conclusion that we have to take the deal if the deal's a good deal and it's already been structured and negotiated by the bondholders. We aren't going to have a real chance to provide input on the indenture provisions, some of those things that we might have to live with for a long time. I would love to have this say that it's going to come back for a presentation to the board at some point after you negotiate it, but before we actually vote on it, so we can actually give some feedback on those indenture provisions before the final deal closes. And I understand timing and how this works, and that it'll have to be a relatively short notice special opportunity for us to have a presentation of those provisions. But I feel like we ought to have a shot at that, or at least provide some input while the negotiation is still in process before it's a done deal, or we aren't really going to have a chance to speak to those indenture provisions. It'll be an up or down vote at that point. And I'd rather not have an up or down vote at the end when I haven't had a chance to talk about it. Does that make sense?
We will be meeting with the ad hoc committee again. We have a meeting scheduled for the 18th we have been working through all of the details as we progress through this process with the committee. And that was our intent, to work with them as well. And we can also provide additional briefings to other board members upon request.
Okay. Again, I guess if you would like to canvass us all separately, I suppose that's not a Brown Act violation for the staff to do that. But I would want to make sure that people get a chance to understand, wrap their minds around what those indenture provisions are going to look like before you walk into a board meeting or you're setting yourself up. And I don't want that to happen. I'd like this to go through smoothly at the end, and I think that means communicating with people about that, because this is exactly where that toll restriction policy type stuff comes from. And if there are things that get negotiated into this deal, please keep us informed of those things before we end up having a single vote that goes sideways.
Okay, Director Bates.
Robert's comments are a good segue for me, because the way I'm reading this, Amy, is that discretion on toll rate setting could return to this board, and that has been a real issue when we went to the lower debt ratio coverage a couple of years ago. That was very difficult, certainly for all of us. And being able to weigh in on the different toll rate increases or perhaps decreases at certain access points would be a much better discussion to be having than what we had in the past. And I'm thinking that, I read that we would have more discretion, and that's a huge plus. I won't be here. I'll be moving either to out there and being one of the public commenters, or maybe I'll be in Sacramento. At this point I don't know, but I think that's something for you all to get a grasp on, because that has been the most difficult thing that I think all of us as electeds have had to confront as members of this board, knowing that we had a responsibility, a huge one, to the people who actually accepted the debt and financed the building of this road. So that's just something for you to pay attention to, segueing from Robert saying, understanding what's in the indentures and how we can make that more flexible for those who have a huge responsibility to respond to taxpayers, our customers, and certainly the bondholders.
Yes, absolutely. We are working within the board goals that you all had set for us when you authorized us to move forward with pulling together this transaction, and that is certainly one of them.
Very good. Thank you.
Director Crew?
Yes, given the questions that have been raised, then it is possible for staff to set up a series of meetings like we did before, which I thought were extremely effective. So all those questions can be answered and we get a clear idea of what's going on before we vote on it. Great.
So, Mr. Kramer, are you
I was nodding my head yes.
crystal clear about the request? I think it's a great idea. And
our plan is, in addition to the ad hoc process, to meet individually with board members to fill them in on the details.
Any further discussion? I believe we do have a motion and a second on this item. Director May.
The last, I would agree that this is a good approach. This will work. I can't impress enough on the board members that these are the kind of, these indenture provisions are arcane, they're complicated, they're weird, but they are what we have to live with, and people will describe those handcuffs for you in great detail after they're all signed. And so, take the time to get familiar with them and understand what they are, because that's what we have to live with.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Move for staff recommendation.
I think it's already been, I believe there's already a motion, so Madam Clerk, do you have the motion and the maker and the second? Okay, anybody need the motion repeated? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Kramen, your report.
Good morning. Would like to report that we were in Washington, D.C. earlier this week to testify before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee on Highway and Transit. And this was regarding discussions about NEPA reform as they start to look forward to the reauthorization of the federal highway bill, which will occur in the next session. As you know, the current bill was a short stopgap bill that expires in May of 2015. We also attended the Mobility 21 conference, and we were represented on a panel regarding tolling and pricing at that conference. We attended a joint session of the California and Washington State Transportation Commissions, and again, we're represented on a panel with regard to tolling, and that was very interesting to get the perspective both from Washington and California, and they also had representatives there from Oregon who were talking about their vehicle miles traveled fee that they've implemented there. Lastly, we will be attending the IBTTA conference in Austin next week. Now I would ask Dave Lowe to update us on traffic and revenue and AET.
Good morning. Very quickly, you should have received a August 2014 traffic and revenue report. And on the San Joaquin facility, we have revenues up 7.4% from August of last year. And transactions are up 0.3% over August of last year. And we did have one less weekday during the month than we did last year. And then I'll go into the all electronic tolling update. We continue to work on our approach to our customers through all electronic tolling since the transition in May. This chart shows the increase in total accounts, and we have about a 20 to 25,000 accounts per month that are in addition. So we should be reaching the 600,000 account level in a few months. And right now we have about 144,000 one-time toll transactions per month. The next slide shows a good trend, which is a decrease in violations. The trend is important because we want to see this continue to decline as we go forward. One of the things that we're working on is adding a new T1 line to our phone system here at the agency, so that we can add 46 new phone lines that would come into the customer service lines. And that allows us to bring more people into the queue that are waiting to get responded to by our customer service reps. And it'll just increase our customer service a little bit more, so they won't get dropped and they won't get shut off on the system. We do have 12 new customer service reps that are working right now since all electronic tolling started. 6 are working on telephone calls, and 6 are working on the written responses to some of the issues that we have. And we have 10 new customer service reps starting training on Monday, so those will be implemented and get on board as soon as possible. Another thing we're working on is a highway advisory radio station, the Toll Roads radio station, which will broadcast messages about our toll payment system to customers on the road. And the one for the 73, you can see a radius map that we have here. The broadcast will be from the toll plaza on the 73, the mainline toll plaza, and you get about a 5-mile radius. Now we haven't confirmed exactly what the radius will be, and maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But we're hoping that we'll get service from all the way up Jamboree Road on the north end all the way down into Aliso Viejo on the south end. So we think that'll be a good way to share our message about the toll payment systems as people are approaching the toll plaza. And we'll be putting signs out on the road to have you dial to 1680, which is on the AM dial, to the San Joaquin Toll Road radio station. So that should be implemented hopefully by the end of the month. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director for announcements and events and this kind of thing.
Directors get no time.
I have two questions. One, on this slide, will we be using, for instance, a familiar voice that people are, like Lane? I mean, will it be the voice of somebody that is so closely connected, that brand?
We have the opportunity to do that. Right now we're having a professional service do the doing the recording, and we'll see how that comes out and how it's received. And we obviously can change that very quickly.
Okay.
You know, on a daily basis, we can go in there and change the message. You can even broadcast live on the system if you need to.
Okay. And could we go back one slide? I just wanted to look at that violation slide you had. And any idea as to why we had that spike? Everything's going great, we're going great. And then the week of the 20th through the 26th of July, how do we account for that spike again? Just when we thought we were moving in the right direction. No accounting for it.
No, I'm not
weird
exactly
signs.
sure, but I'm sure we can find the reason for that. And
I was
bring it
just
to you.
curious.
That's the holiday.
Yeah.
It could be from
The downtrend there was actually during kind of the 4th of July holiday when more people were off, and then when they came back, our traffic went up as well as the violations in the game. So I think it was just the holiday impact there.
Okay, with the tip. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain and Director Che.
Dave, I'm not sure if you have this information, but you listed that the total number of accounts were going up 25,000 per month. I heard you right. Curious if we've taken a look at what are the total amounts of Fast Track or toll road user accounts in the county compared to households or just total number of drivers in the county. In other words, what's the proliferation of those that are familiar with toll roads, toll systems, and have an account to use?
We have all kinds of data that we can slice and dice. So if you're talking about a per capita, for instance, a per capita transponder holding, then we could calculate that. I don't know that we have done that, but we still see quite a bit of growth, and especially in the express account category since we opened up all electronic tolling.
Okay, so maybe I'll work with you to see how we can
absolutely.
data. Thank you.
Okay, Director Che.
Yeah, I just want to go back quickly to this idea about having a radio station. What is I didn't quite understand exactly, what are we going to be broadcasting? Is it just?
Well, the initial message will be that you're on the 73 toll road, and this is a toll road, and that if you do not have an account, you can pay your toll online after you get done with your trip. So they don't, pull over and start logging on right there. You can do it after the trip. Just go onto the tollroads.com and get that
Well,
information.
it's mostly just about how to pay.
Yeah, it's a really quite a simple
we could use it for other
method.
things, right? And we could,
What's that?
or we could use the radio station for other things.
You want to set up a talk show?
Yeah, we could have a talk show, exactly. I was thinking talk show.
Talking about the benefit of toll roads.
Mhm.
With commercials first.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Let's go with the pay online message. I think that was, well, at least for now.
I totally disagree with you.
Really?
I think it should be a lot more fun.
Then I'd love to hear your suggestions.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Anything further, Mr. Kramer?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we'll move to director's reports. And we'll start with Director Ming. If you could give us a report about the joint toll operations.
I will be happy to, and it turns out, Mr. Chair, that this was actually a perfect timing for your report. Thank you very much. You covered many of the things that I would have covered, so I don't need to. The two things that the committee focused on the most, we are still laser focused on the number of calls that are getting dropped and the need to decrease the time of customer service, both for the email responses and to allow people to get through on the phone lines. I think we're happy with, or at least the committee seemed to be happy with, the efforts the staff is making now with the increased number of the temporary staff that's coming on, the technology changes that are going to allow more people into the queue. Those things are good things. That number still has not come down as much as it needs to. And I think we left staff with some instruction to see what we could do to reduce training time so that people could get on faster and continue to provide better customer service. And then the one other item that I wanted to mention, I didn't pull the agenda item at the beginning about the budget report. And it was a great report, by the way, that you should get credit for. You know, revenues are up, expenses are down. It's a good thing. But I do think this committee has continually said to staff that, you know, bring on the resources that you need to spend the money that you need to spend to get the customer service back where it needs to be. And I think that's what staff has been doing, and so we've been watching that happen. But that's definitely what that committee spends most of its time talking about. The other important piece that we mentioned at the committee was the timing for the customer services contract. Our current contract comes up middle of next year, and staff was recommending, and I think the committee was agreeing, that we shouldn't try to force the RFP process into that timing, but acknowledge that we're going to need an extension of that contract so that we can go through a proper RFP process and make sure we really fully vet that and get a new customer service vendor to come in that will do the right kind of service. It may be the same vendor, it may be someone else, but staff was suggesting that we shouldn't try to meet that contract timeline, and that's, I think, what the committee was kind of acknowledging. So it was, I think, good. It was a good meeting, good progress, but still obviously very focused on those customer service contracts and making sure we provide good service to our customers. So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Director Ming, for that always thorough report. We will move to the joint marketing report, which will be delivered by Director Everett.
Yes, yesterday we had our ad hoc committee meeting, and it was primarily to review the findings of the study that we had authorized back in May on the loyalty program feasibility. The net of it was, after looking at a number of different programs, there were none that had any significant cost benefit or return on investment. And so we kind of concluded that we should be focusing on other types of marketing incentive programs targeting certain areas as opposed to a loyalty program. One of the things that came out of this, a byproduct, which I thought was great, and I wish I'd said something earlier because it would have been nice to look at the 5 charts right now. But at some point in time, I think we should have a brief presentation on some of the study of, especially the patron profile study, which talked about where do our people come from that are in the top 10%, the fast track people, the household income, household age, some maps that showed from a geographical point of view where the cities that they come from. I thought it was just fascinating and great information that I think everybody would be interested in seeing. And it would probably only take about 5 minutes to show those 5 charts. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions of Director Everett? Okay, any other director reports at this time? Director Olivato.
I just want to invite everyone to Orange County's 125th anniversary celebration Saturday at Mission San Juan Capistrano. Be at Hands Around the Mission at 10 o'clock, where people are going, probably a couple thousand folks will join hands all the way around the mission. And that will be followed with some celebrations for Orange County's 125th anniversary, being that San Juan is the birthplace of Orange County. Very apropos. There is also, in honor of the election season, melodrama, San Juan Capistrano's Dirty Laundry. And that's a story of a young lady who put her laundry across the railroad tracks in 1880 to try and stop, I don't think it was Metrolink back then, but it was Santa Fe Railroad from coming through town because it was causing her chickens to not lay eggs. She was incarcerated and died in San Quentin 3 years later. So I mean, it's a real melodrama. Yeah. So, but that'll be reenacted along with some other reenactments, and it'll be a lot of fun. A lot of things to do Saturday. Thank you.
Sounds like perfect stuff for the radio station to me.
Who are you going to get to reenact putting their clothes on the railroad tracks? That's what I want to know.
We asked Metrolink if we could do that, and they declined.
Well, then you should check with Amtrak. Director Bates.
Just a question for Mr. CEO. On your trip to Washington, you did provide, information to the Transportation Committee, whatever the official name, it would be important for us to have a memo that covered the issues regarding NEPA and what progress has been made. I asked for this at OCTA because we've been working on it, I think, since Mr. Bufa, who I see sitting in the audience, was once chair of OCTA, trying to get some changes in NEPA, an acceleration of the process, not any elimination of the due diligence that's required to protect our environment, but to speed up the process, which is all about the costs of doing many of the infrastructure projects. So if that was part of the discussion and we have an update on any progress made on a number of the, I think, reforms that we asked for, both from this agency and OCTA, I think would be very illuminating for those of us who are still, I think, shall we say, constrained in seeing our projects done while we have a seat on these boards.
Right. Yes, Director. We did share our information with OCTA, and we're actually getting into the process now. So I will share what our presentation was and the recommendations we made. But now we're going into the process where we will be working with staff on the committee to help move those forward through the process, at least on the House side, for now as they develop the bill.
Because it's all about educating them. I mean, they're far removed from seeing what we go through, and we have, iteration after iteration of certain things that are more bureaucratic and not responsive to the public necessarily. They have a right to appeal and do all that. But speeding up that whole process is very important to all of us, and
right.
Washington can help a lot on that.
Yeah, and we do have interest from other agencies now that we sort of have this entree to helping with that committee, that they're wanting to help use us to get their messages through as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other director reports? Okay, the next item is joint closed session. Mr. Joseph, is there a reason to adjourn to a joint closed session, and if so, what?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commencing shortly after 10:30, as soon as the Foothill Eastern Board has convened its meeting, we will be going into joint closed session for two items: a conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation under Government Code 54956.95, and a public employee performance evaluation with regard to the Chief Executive Officer, and we do anticipate there may be reportable action.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we will adjourn the San Joaquin Hills Board to joint closed session, and the Foothill Eastern Board will take the dais and commence its meeting. So we will be back.
Mr. Joseph, I was going to say Director Joseph, Mr. Joseph, would you please tell us what we're going to be speaking about, or the reason for the closed session?
Yes, Madam Chair, we will be conferring jointly with the San Joaquin Hills Transportation Corridor Agency, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation under Government Code 54956.95, and public employee performance evaluation with regard to the Chief Executive Officer. We do anticipate that there may be reportable action. After the conclusion of the joint closed session, we will then be conferring with legal counsel as the Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency Board only regarding the various items listed in section Roman numeral 6 of the agenda.
Thank you. We are adjourned to closed session.
Corridor Agencies Board back to order. We just left our joint closed session meeting, and we do have one item to report. And the joint boards took action to form a subcommittee to work with Interim Executive Director Mike Cramen and Steve Filarski as counsel for the agency to develop proposed terms of employment and a draft contract of employment to be brought to the boards at their regular board meetings on October 9th, 2014 for discussion and approval by the full boards in open session. And that's my report. Seeing no further questions, we will thank you, Director Shea. Is there a second? A second by the remaining members on the dais here. Jointly. All in favor? Aye. Didn't think we'd get any opposition to that. The next regular meeting of the San Joaquin Hills Board of Directors will be held on September 25th at 12 noon at TCA offices right here. And the meeting is adjourned.
Do we have a report out on our closed session?
Nothing to report, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, there is a report from the joint. The San Joaquin gave the report, but the Foothill Eastern has not. That's right.
Okay.
Regarding the CEO.
would you like me to give that report?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. We discussed the performance of the CEO, and we're very happy to say that it was a unanimous decision to ask Mr. Kramen to continue his employment as CEO on a regular basis. Is that good, Bob Rich? Regular basis. So we invite you. Do you accept our offer?
I do, thank you.
Okay, now then we'll get into the details of the contract later. So
Yeah, we don't want to praise them too much, but
Right.
we have to keep it on a,
That's right, that's right. Okay.
normal level.
All right. Okay, public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the board. Do we have any public comments? We do not. Do I need to read this if no one's here? No, thank you very much. Consent calendar. Items number 1 through 4. Anyone would like to pull questions? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Patty, did you get that? Okay, so motion was
Be me.
Mark Murphy made the motion and Gail Easton seconded. Okay?
Oh, it's the other way around, actually,
Sorry.
just to be accurate.
Why does it say 1 through 4, but it's actually 1 through 3? Am I reading this wrong or what?
Well, it's probably a typo. It is, you're right, it is 1 through 3. 1 through 3. All right, so we had a motion and a second. Motion by Gail Easton, second by Mark Murphy, Director Murphy. And do I have all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, let's move on. Board business item number 4. And Mr. Kramen.
We at our last board meeting, we passed a resolution for the board meeting times that was set as a second Thursday and at a specific time. However, there are at points in time need for additional regular board meetings, and there's also the need to adjust the start time for the board meetings. As an example, in June, we would start San Joaquin Hills earlier and probably push Foothill Eastern to a later start, just because when we have more material in there. The other part is that rather than just saying the second Thursday, we're going to a specific calendar of the regular board meetings, and so attached to this item is the listing of all the board meetings, and then that's how we will look at it in the future, as opposed to a generic reference to a date and time. It'll be a specific schedule of meetings. So that's what we're asking for your approval today.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we move this forward. I think it's great that we're allowing us to calendar our day, and getting a standard time is going to make it so much easier for so many of us. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. So Director Boyce made the motion and Director Shea seconded that motion. Any discussion? Just, Director Murphy, did you want to, I know that there's an issue with, no? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Any discussion? Yes?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Do we have the ability to send Outlook invites? And that way, to the extent that there are changes, it'll be updated for us automatically. I don't know how many of us use Outlook, but if there's a couple yeses, that would be helpful. But obviously not germane to the issue completely.
Oh, that's good.
So,
Okay,
just a
I
suggestion.
would expect that it is, so we'll look into that and make sure.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. All right. All in favor of the motion? Please
Aye.
raise- Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, let's moving forward. All right. Number 5, interim human resources legal services. Our HR manager, Sherry McCaig.
Good afternoon. So before you today is a motion to amend our current contract with Filarski and Watt for professional legal services, specifically for human resources and employment matters for the next 6 months in the amount not to exceed $25,000. This amendment would serve on an interim basis while staff prepares a request for proposal to procure these specialized professional legal services on a long-term basis. TCA staff, as well as members of the board, have worked with Steve Filarski and Phil's expertise in the area of employment have been exceptional. and recommend you continuing to engage his services at this time. We anticipate beginning a procurement process for these services in November and returning to the boards for approval in February or March. This concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of HR Manager McKay? No? All right.
I just have a quick question.
Okay.
So
Yes,
we're
Director
going
Chen.
out to bid on this?
We will.
Okay, we will. Great, thank you.
Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Move the item.
Okay. That was, okay. So Director Voigt's moved and seconded by Director Puckett. Please register your votes. All in favor say.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, moving right along. This is great. Okay. SCAG representative. And Barbie, you can keep it short and sweet. I think most of us get it.
Okay, I will cut to the chase here. The item before you is the nomination of a TCA representative for SCAG. I'm sure you're all familiar, but our roads are all part of SCAG's regional transportation plans. This coming year in 2016, they're going to be updating their sustainable community strategies and developing their 2016 RTP, so it's essential that we have a representative on SCAG. Director Bartlett is our current representative on SCAG, and she will be stepping down in September, so we would like to replace her, as it's essential that we have a representative. And the process for doing so is today you would make a nomination from your fellow board members, and then a select committee of the chairs, vice chairs, and Lisa Bartlett as the current representative would then make a selection from those nominated. And that's a brief summary of the report.
Any questions of Ms. Davis? No? All right. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Ross Chun.
Do I have a second? Okay. Are there any other nominations? People that would like to be considered?
Our last meeting, didn't we also approve Bert Hack? So should we do the same thing here, or no? Okay, so I'll put his name forward.
Yes. So
it's
the
consistent.
motion is for Director Bert Heck to also be considered by the subcommittee. And I'm sorry, who seconded that? I did. Seconded by Director Bates.
I have a comment.
Yes, and Director Alavato.
I believe that it's really advantageous for us to have two members from the TCA representing us on SCAG. Bert is currently our member appointed by OCOG.
Mm-hmm.
The one we're talking about here would be appointed by the TCA.
Mm-hmm.
In order for Bert to serve on the TCA representative, he'd have to give up his OCOG position, which would just leave us with one person. So I'm not sure if Bert has considered that, but I would hope that that would be considered.
Okay.
Having two people, I think, is better than just one on SCAG.
Okay.
And Mr. Heck, Director Heck, does you wear two hats very well?
Yes, he does.
However, just for clarification, he would have to step down, as Director Alavato said.
I mean, with his position there now, he's basically wearing two hats. They just don't know it. We know. We know.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Director Heck, and so we have two, Bert Heck and Ross Chun, who will be considered in that meeting, and then we'll bring that back, is that right, in October? Is that correct?
Actually, my understanding is that the committee would actually, not the committee that I just mentioned, would then select from the two that you've nominated. And then they would be actually at SCAG's first meeting in October, the first Thursday of the month.
That's too fast for government work.
Sorry
Okay.
about that.
Thank you, Barbara, for the explanation. Okay, so we need to vote on both of those motions. Let's vote on, can we do them together? We can do them together, right? Okay, so do we get a motion for both? Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. And Patty, you got both of those? Director Beal was seconded, yes. And discussion, yes.
Yeah, I actually would encourage a substitute motion of doing them separate, because I found Sam's argument to be pretty persuasive. I'd like to have just one candidate and encourage Bert to stay with the assignment that he already has.
Okay,
So a substitute motion would be to take them individually.
all right. Substitute motion, do I have a second on the substitute motion? Okay, so we'll do that first, right? Is that right, George?
You need to vote on this motion
First, that's
before
right.
then.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the substitute motion that we will deal with both of them separately, okay? So please, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, now,
Now a motion to approve.
Mr. Heck.
Well, no, actually, it was our first candidate, Russ Chung. So motion to approve Russ.
Okay. And we have, do we need a second? I thought we already had that motion. Do we have, we already had that motion. Those are, I think they're already on the table.
Let's vote on them separately then.
But we're going to vote on them separately. Gosh. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. All right, please. All in favor of Ross Chun being considered by the committee, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? No, thank you. All those in favor of Director Heck being considered by the committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Great. You're opposed? Okay. Oh, okay, very good. So we have one opposed in our difficult child here, Craig Young, Director Craig Young. Okay. Moving right along. Chief Executive Officer's report. Mr. Cramen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
We can now say that you are the Chief Executive Officer.
I can get rid of the acting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where is that? Let's get it out of here. Yeah.
We were in Washington, D.C. earlier this week to testify before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee's subcommittee on highways and transit. And basically our testimony was in regards to NEPA reform as they start to have discussions about the next highway bill, which will come up in the next session and hopefully be enacted by spring, because as you know, the short-term highway bill expires in May of 2015. We also attended the Mobility 21 conference where we were represented in a panel on tolling and pricing. Earlier in August, we attended a joint session of the California and Washington State Transportation Commissions. There, again, we provided testimony on tolling to those two agencies. And we will be attending the IBTTA, which is the big tolling organization. They're having their annual conference in Austin early next week. And now we'll give you an update on traffic and revenue and AET with Dave Lowe.
Quick update, there's a Foothill Eastern Traffic and Revenue Report you should have all received. Revenues for August 2014 are up 1.4% from August of last year. And transactions are actually down 3.2%, although we did have one less weekday during the month of August 2014. So, all electronic tolling update, I'll go through this really quickly. The first slide shows you total accounts on our system for the past 11 months, or 13 months, I guess. And it shows we're getting up to the 600,000 account level. We average about 25,000 accounts, new accounts per month. Next slide shows violations, which are trending down, which is a good thing. Although we do still have quite a volume of violations that we're dealing with. In the customer service department, we're adding a T1 line to our phone system that expands the capacity, allows more of a queue to develop, and people don't get cut off, or so they can get their questions answered by our customer service reps. We do have 12 new customer service reps online right now. 6 are working on phones, 6 are working handling written material, and we do have 10 new customer service representatives starting on Monday for training, and they'll be put on the line as soon as they can. So, the other update I want to give you is we're implementing a highway advisory radio station. One will be at Catalina View on the 73. Another is at Windy Ridge on the 241 in the north leg. And that system will be broadcasting messages that tell the customers online not to go online and to use the toll payment system, the one-time toll, if they don't have an account on the roadway. So you'll see signs that go up to say tune to 1690, which is the Windy Ridge 1690 AM, which is the Windy Ridge broadcast station, and we'll be circulating a message every few minutes on how to pay our tolls on the system, so people can dial in if they don't know how the road works and get some information there. It also directs them to perform the transaction after the trip, so that's a good thing too, to keep people focused on what they're doing, driving. Any questions?
Any questions? David and Mike, I did talk to Mark, Director Murphy, you brought something up last time, some technology solutions. And so I would like, I don't know if you have the opportunity or had the opportunity to talk together, but if you can give us a status now or the next time, because I wanted to make sure that that just didn't get out there and just died. I wanted some response.
No, we did hear those suggestions, I think specifically the callback feature and things like that. So we continue to look in that. Our current contracted system doesn't allow that, so we're definitely consider that as we do the reprocurement for our customer service center contract over the next years. We're putting that together, and we do look at that and evaluate. It's not something that we can implement quickly, but we are still continuing to evaluate it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I do have one comment.
Yes.
I thought your last point was, even though you smiled when you made it, I thought it was a very important point to be made, is to encourage people to do that when they get off of the road, so they're not doing that while they're on their phone on the road. That's a crucial, very important point. I'm glad you're doing that, and I think it should be emphasized at every opportunity. So, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. And that will be it for reports, okay? So, director's reports, I have a mobility and a marketing. Okay, the mobility ad hoc met last Wednesday. Staff provided an update on today's SCAG Regional Council meeting, and that SCAG will be hopefully approving the 2015 FTIP, which is the Federal Transportation Improvement Plan, correct? The Tesoro extension and the remaining segment of the 241 are also included in that FTIP because of the air quality and greenhouse gas benefits that the project provides. And then finally, we were briefed on Mike's upcoming testimony before the House and Transportation Infrastructures Committee on Highway and Transit. And I think you already gave some feedback on that, correct? So I don't think I need to go through that. The goal of that hearing was to provide the committee with real-life scenarios regarding the success and challenges of the environmental permitting process, and I'm sure that you had many to share. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. All right. Marketing ad hoc committee met on Wednesday, September 10th, to review the findings of the loyalty program feasibility study that was approved by the boards in May. Several programs and rewards were simulated in a model based on actual patron data, and the key finding of the feasibility study was that a loyalty program will deliver marginal return on investment performance at best. So the money that we spent was good. In that fact, we got the questions answered that we are not going to be going forward with any of the rewards programs that they went through. Although I think it was it Jim that asked for the 5 slides, the 5 options. So I think we're going to bring that back. The committee was aligned on the recommendation to postpone further exploration of a points program until after the AET transition, and staff will retool the Toll Roads Tuesday program to provide added value for driving on the roads, and targeted email communications will provide toll road tips and special offers. And Lisa Tejas, do you have anything you want to share about that? Anything additional? No? Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. Other reports? Yes.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I have joint toll whenever. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you should go first. Because you're prettier than Sam.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, well, Sam's just going to talk about the gala, so please, take care of business.
All right, I'll do that. The Joint Toll Operations Ad Hoc Committee met on September 10th and reviewed the following topics: toll transactions and revenue update, AET conversion operations update, customer service center procurement update, and highway access radio update. The toll transactions and revenue update showed that transactions and revenue distribution across the different payment options has remained relatively constant in the summer months. The AET operations report provided an update on trends in account signups, violation activity, call center performance, and back office activity. The Customer Service Center procurement update summarized the proposed schedule, followed by a discussion of the need for flexibility in the new CSC contract and overall procurement timing. The Highway Access Radio update included information on radio, antenna locations, and coverage zones.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Director Puckett, any questions? Any other reports from directors? Anything? No? All right. That's it. Oh, excuse me, Dr. Olivato, I forgot about the gala. Please tell us about the gala.
No, it's not that's in the evening. No, the morning thing in San Juan Capistrano this Saturday, I mentioned the other board meeting, is the celebration of Orange County's 125th anniversary, partnering with the county, and yes. Pat will be there doing a proclamation also. One of the cool things at 10 o'clock, there's going to be a Hands Around the Mission. It's going to be breaking the Guinness World Book of Records for something. I'm not sure what. Around the mission or holding hands or something. But it'll be, if you want to be in the Guinness World Book of Records, come then at 10. Also, it's free admission into the mission that day for all Orange County residents. So it's kind of a cool thing. If you got a big family, bring them down.
Are you going to be there?
No. I have other commitments. But you can see the San Juan Capistrano's Dirty Laundry. It's a reenactment of a young lady in the 1880s whose chickens were not producing eggs because of the railroad coming through at that time, and she put her laundry across the railroad tracks and stopped the train. And it was her form of protest. It wound her up in San Quentin, where she passed away 3 years later. It's kind of harsh, but there's another story there. But there'll be a reenactment of that, except I don't think we're going to put anything across the railroad
Did
track.
they have animal activist groups back then, or
They
no?
did,
They
well-
should have protecting the chicken.
Yeah, protect those chickens.
That sounds very exciting. Are we going to need to get tickets for that?
No tickets required. Everything's going to be
I
free.
just don't know why you're not going to be there. If they want to talk about dirty laundry.
You know, Director Alvaro, I tried to save you from this, but you jumped right in. So you know what?
Oh,
All
I'm
of
down.
you.
Sounds like
I'll be there in spirit.
I am adjourning.
A point of information,
Oh,
whose dirty laundry will it be across the tracks?
That's what I wondered.
What happened?
Rhonda's, I think. Okay.
Thank you all very much. We will adjourn until the next meeting, which is October 9th at 10:30. Is that correct? It says 9:30 in here, but it's 10:30. 10:30 on October 9th. Thank you all very much and have a wonderful month. I'll see all of you probably in the next few days.